back to Radiality. It's Mark and Innessa.
We are back, and we left off on how everything started from nothing and became something, and what is that originated that reaction. So Mark, what do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of a complex thing, but what we now know about the physical universe is that the majority of everything that we see, the entirety of everything that we see, the light, the stars, the planets, the dust, all of it, all physical matter, is about 4% pollution, a 4% impurity in a universe that operates largely with zero energy. When you look at a solid object, it's not the matter or the atoms that make up a solid object that give it its mass or allows it to maintain its shape or its structure. Instead, it's what physicists refer to as virtual particles. Particles which pop into and out of existence so rapidly that, current detection methods leave us unable to see them. And what we find is if you take a region of space and you take everything out of it, all of the light, all of the particles, all the gases, it's still an energetic, boiling mass of these virtual particles. And so when we think of the universe prior to its creation, and the expansion of space-time and everything that we know about that, it's insufficient to imagine a big empty space, as though it were a big empty room where something was going to happen.
But who will be imagining in the first place?
Well, I mean, that's how most people think of it. When people imagine the Big Bang, they think of a big...
No, I mean, imagining if there was no one to see that or be there, how you can imagine? I'm not saying from now.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of religious people say. It's like, the reason that it's here is because, or the reason...
observed it?
Yeah, we observe it.
Well, that's not religious. Why are you mixing that up?
No, what I'm saying is...
spiritual more.
No, what I'm saying is the universe is here for us, and that's why we're here, and we experience it where nobody else does, and therefore... it's very anthropic.
So you're saying that us as humans and the universe wouldn't exist if we weren't aware of each other, right?
If who weren't aware?
Well, so there is no one to observe, and if there is no one to observe, there is basically it doesn't exist. They say that from spiritual perspective. Basically,
I suppose.
How can you exist if?
I mean, that sounds like
if you're not known.
That sounds like a Zen thing.
Well, it doesn't matter how it sounds, religious, Zen, or whatever you want to call it. What do you think about that?
If people didn't exist to experience the universe would go right on existing and would go on doing what the universe does. If life got completely wiped out, and I mean completely wiped out, on the planet Earth, to where there was no longer a planet here and it was just gone, it's not going to impact whether or not the universe exists. We say if there's no one around to experience it. What, you mean on Earth? what does that mean? You know?
I mean, in general, kind of from philosophical point of view.
Human beings, okay, if you consider that everything that we see in the universe is an impurity of about 4%, what fraction of that is human beings?
Why that matters?
Well, because it certainly speaks to the nature of it speaks to the understanding that the universe is not here for our benefit. We're a side effect at best.
Well, I'm not saying the universe is friendly to us or not. I'm not saying that.
It's certainly not friendly to us. It's
it's certainly not friendly.
horribly hostile. And we can't even figure out how to get to Mars with all the radiation that they're going to have to put up with. So it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, but you separate the universe from us, and I don't think that there is separation.
I'm not just talking about like separating it.
We are the universe. We are going.
Yeah, but not in a magical
intertwined
sort of way.
Together as particle in a wave, and being simultaneously the universe and the individual.
No.
Why not?
Because a bead on a necklace does not a necklace make.
Well, then explain yourself.
I just did.
You bound. Well, I don't understand it in those terms. You just bound ourselves as humans to biological existence only, and even though you say that there is consciousness, you don't say what is the consciousness, what that is. You still don't say. You're just going about it in one direction, another direction, and I still don't have a clear answer on that. And I would like to hear what you think about the consciousness. If everything came from nothing, and and you explain some on that.
Yeah, again.
Still, I don't get the picture.
Again,
you describe something and
animals can't be animals unless they become animals by developing into animals through the evolutionary process that turns them into animals. And in doing so, in order to be aware that there's food to eat, water to drink, shelter when we need it, etc., we have developed coping mechanisms that went from everything as basic as a little flagellum on a cell swimming away from something that's toxic to it in the oceans, all the way to deciding whether or not we should invest in an annuity fund. And, one process is very much like the other process. They all come from the same base. The fact that they pile complexity on top of complexity doesn't speak to the fact that our consciousness is some sort of some universal wave or something that we're tapping into, and now we're on that frequency where we get to be a living conscious being, and then
you're separating
yourself when our
that.
physical self dies, then we have to turn that station goes off and we go to a different channel or something. It's just, I'm
not implying anything. I'm saying what if, because you don't have a definite answer about the existence of something. Well, it's not something else. It's the mystic experiences that people
don't have mystical experiences. People have psychotic experiences.
Psychotic experiences. Well, I would call it psyche kind of based, but not psychotic, because psychotic has a negative connotation.
Well, only because people put it there. I mean, they think that if you have a psychosis, that it has to be some sort of a horrible thing. And the reason they think that is because it causes us to act in ways that are aberrant to normal baseline psychology. But, and in fact, I think I could take it further. If you look at the Apostle Paul, who wasn't an apostle, he never met Jesus in his whole life, and he had this fall down on your knees moment where he is converted to Christianity by what he describes as a visitation from Jesus himself, definitely describable as a spiritual, magical, religious, mystical experience. Certainly described that way by the people for whom that applies to in their faith. But it went on to cause more and bloodier wars than any other experience in history. It was responsible for the destruction of entire cultures and people and entire civilizations brought to ruin because some man claimed that he had this spiritual experience. Well, if that's a good thing, tell me where the good part is.
What do you mean good part?
Well, you said it has a negative connotation, but quite frankly, I struggle.
The psychotic? Well, the word psychotic.
I struggle. You're saying I shouldn't use the word psychotic. I'm saying that I'm struggling to find anyone in history who claims to have had a spiritual, religious experience.
I'm not talking about religious. You're mixing.
Or a spiritual experience. That where did that turn into good?
What do you mean turned into good?
How is it good to have a spiritual experience?
Well, but who is talking about good or bad? We're just talking about the existence or experience that actually took place in some people's lives, not in everyone's.
That most people who claim to have a spiritual quote-unquote existence or experience, if they're historically noted for it, I'm not talking about anecdotal stories on, from, your local church group who, they prayed for 5 days and when they woke, at the end of it, the tumor was gone or some nonsense like that. I'm talking about genuine, quote-unquote, religious experiences, spiritual experiences, where people actually come into contact with the divine. And that's Moses talking to a burning bush. That's people seeing Jesus come back to life after he was, obviously dead for 3 days. None of those experiences in history have ever turned out good for the majority of people.
Mark, I'm not talking about the good or bad. I'm not giving any quality.
But you did. You said that the use of the word psychotic is inappropriate.
Inappropriate in a sense because when we think about psychotic, we think about psychological issues. Well, at least I'm
right.
not a person who's...
And now we're on the same page.
English is not my first language. So when you say psychotic, for me, it's like, okay, this is psychological experience. So you're talking about spirituality and psychology, that it's the same thing? I don't think so.
What people experience as spirituality is part of their psychology.
I'm not saying it's not part of it. It's intertwined, but it's not. It's different things. When you're talking about the consciousness, the psychology, it's not there yet. The psychological experiences. When you already have a consciousness, a base, or something that arises, your understanding of the world, your perception, before you know the culture, before you've had experiences. This is how I talk about consciousness from that point of view, from that perspective. So I don't want us to confuse each other by maybe thinking about something else. We use certain terms, and there is a little language barrier too. So
no, there's not a big magical cloud of consciousness that we were born and tap into. That's not.
So this is what I say. So there is no. Well, I'm not saying how much of it. I'm just saying there's
no universal thread of consciousness for biological beings.
Okay, so we are just bound to this biological existence, and then we are dying and nothing else happening, and we don't get reborn, so people don't worry about it, because sometimes we think that's a good thing. Like from your point of view, the reincarnation is like, it makes us arrogant that we're going to be immortal. It's not really arrogance. I don't think about it that way. I think about it as actually a curse, because being immortal, it's so tiring. And we'll be back shortly. We are taking a break. Thanks for listening.